A neat roadside ditch, without a single hint of debris. With trimmed grass separated a field with a swaying sea of wheat from the highway. A dirt road, straight as an arrow, led across the field to the blackening forest in the distance. On the other side of the highway, there was a similar field, only already sown, judging by the bright yellow flowers, with rapeseed. Vehicles of all makes, sizes, and colors sped past, ignoring the group of people on the side of the road. The film crew's car stopped at the intersection of the freeway and a dirt road. Two people got out of the minibus, a pretty young brunette and a bearded guy in his 30s, with his hair gathered in something like a samurai ponytail on his head. "How's the camera? Are you set up?" Ilsa was talking to the operator, Johan, who was just finishing setting up the equipment. Their driver, Bjorn, was sitting in his seat with the door open, waiting for Ilsa to record another video, and the material would be edited later, after returning to the city. There were still several kilometers left before the destination of their journey along the very dirt road that ran through the field. Ilsa's younger sister, Olivia, was peering over Bjorn's shoulder from the passenger seat. She had followed Ilsa on the occasion of the holidays, and since Ilsa had long promised to take her on the set of some kind of report if she completed the school year without failures. Well, as much as Ilsa didn't deny it, she didn't want to mess with a hormonally unstable teenager. She had to keep her word. That's why I had to watch my younger sister's poorly concealed flirting all the way, which she openly tormented both men with. Moreover, Bjorn openly mocked Olivia, and she did not even understand this. God, what a Spanish shame. And now he's sitting there, blowing pink bubbles out of chewing gum, and openly staring at Johan. "Let's go," Johan commanded, and the red LED on the equipment lit up. Ilsa nodded and began to speak into a microphone with a windshield. It might have been summer, but today the weather was windy, and the viewer definitely would not want to listen to the howling of the wind and the noise of the road. "Hello, dear viewers. Very soon we will meet our heroes Lars and Linda, who invested a lot of money in the purchase and refurbishment of an underground bunker during the Cold War." She pointed her hand towards the forest, which was built when the world was on the verge of nuclear war. Ilsa took a few steps to the side, shielding her eyes from the bright sun, and continued. "Now we'll turn off the main road and take a secondary road, and in about 15 or 20 minutes, we'll finally meet our heroes, who 5 times, Ilsa emphasized these words, refused us an interview, and did not want to tell us what made them move from the surface under the earth. Are their expectations of a nuclear apocalypse now stronger than during the confrontation between the two superpowers? Or maybe they're just crazy sectarians? Or ordinary sociophobes who want to isolate themselves from society and the world? We'll find out soon. And that's it." Johan turned off the camera. "Well, we just have to make one last dash to get an interview, and in the evening we'll have coffee at our hotel," Ilsa said, climbing back into the minibus. "Or beer," Olivia reminded him. "No, dear, you won't drink anything stronger than coffee. At least as long as you're with me," Ilsa retorted. "I'm responsible for you, so no alcohol." Olivia folded her arms across her chest and pouted, but it was obvious that she was doing it deliberately. "Let's get your crazies off," Johan said. "We'll do it faster. We'll get back faster." For the next quarter of an hour, they raced along the wheat road, kicking up clouds of overheated dust due to the hot afternoon, pausing just before entering the forest, which was blocked by an old striped barrier painted white and black. Here they shot a couple more small videos that can be inserted into the installation. After driving through the woods for a few minutes, they came to another fence with an open gate, through which they found themselves in a small clearing. There was a hill in the middle of the clearing, almost in its center, the height of an average village house. "Is this their bunker?" Bjorn said, leaning forward over the steering wheel as their car braked on the landing in front of a massive locked door. "Johan!" Ilsa called out. "We need to make some general plans. Let's go around the hill, take pictures of the clearing, the forest, the door, and me, of course. We'll organize it right now," Johan replied, getting out of the car and checking the working capacity of the equipment. Soon he was following Ilsa around, filming the journalist and the surrounding area. "They seem to see us," Johan pointed to the video cameras mounted on metal poles around the hill. "Well, let them see." Olivia blew up a large pink bubble and burst it with gusto. "We have nothing to hide." Her fingers ran over Bjorn's shoulder. Are you going to carry my gear? He grinned. You're a fool. She waved it away. I'm almost 18. Don't give it to me. The driver laughed. Lolita. Olivia pretended to be offended and got out of the car too. After making several laps and even climbing to the top of the hill, they eventually went down and returned to the metal door leading into the belly of the bunker. Ilsa straightened her jacket once more, brushed a red curl from her eyes and, receiving an approving look from Johan, brought the microphone with the channel's logo to her face. So, now we're going to try to visit and interview the man who built the real bunker, waiting for the apocalypse. Or, she tried to make her voice mysterious, not expecting, but just wanting to get yourself such an amazing place to live. Did you write it down? Did you write it down? Confirmed by Johan. What's next? What's that? Ilsa didn't understand. We'll ring the doorbell, of course. There's a bell right there. And there's a camera over there. They've probably noticed us for a long time. With these words, Ilsa pressed the call button. There was no sound, which made it unclear whether the bell was working at all or not. Hello. Ilsa looked at the camera above the bell button, waited, and waved her hand at the camera that hung above the entrance, smiled. Finally, there were vague hisses and clicks in the speaker. There seems to be some confusion on the other side. You said there would be 2 of you. A man's voice came from a crackling speaker. Yes, me and the cameraman we're going to be interviewing. And this, Ilsa sighed, is my sister and our driver. I think we won't overstay your hospitality too much if they also look at the bunker from the inside. Yes? The owner of the voice on the other side of the door seemed to be thinking about something. Just a minute. Johan and Ilsa exchanged glances. A couple of minutes later, they heard a mechanism go off somewhere inside, and the handle on the bunker door turned. You can go through, the speaker said. Down the hall, then down the stairs, and we'll meet you. Once inside, please close the door behind you. It is only partially automatic. Johan pulled the heavy door open. Could you meet us outside, don't you think? He said. Ilsa just shrugged her shoulders vaguely, saying what to take from the weirdos who decided to dig into the ground. When the door closed behind them, they found themselves in a dimly lit, short corridor, ahead of which was another metal door, beyond which was a metal landing, from which a similar latticed staircase led down. There's no connection, Ilsa said, looking at the glowing phone screen. Not surprising, considering the thickness of the walls, Johan agreed. Going down the stairs, the guests found themselves in front of another door, in the middle of which there was almost a steering wheel from the ship, only it was such a handle from the lock. The steering wheel turned, releasing the latches from the slots, and the 4 were finally able to enter the bunker's living compartment. No. It turned out to be just another gateway. Hello. My name is Lars. A man in his 40s said, smiling, but without extending his hand. This is my wife, Linda. Are you filming already? Yes, Ilsa said, glancing at Johan and the working camera, as the guests clumsily crowded into the meek airlock. Well, that's what you came here for, Lars said thoughtfully and walked away. Please come in. Now my wife and I will show you how the bunker is arranged. Where, what works, and how it works. And this? Ilsa pointed with her eyes at the walls of the airlock, from which the nozzles were peeking out. There were similar ones in the floor and ceiling. This? This is the decontamination room, Lars explained. This is where the processing of those who come from outside takes place. And you won't process us? Ilsa tried to joke. Well, you're not infected with radiation, Lars objected reasonably and without a trace of humor. In general, this is in case someone wants to check on how things are on the surface. Here, he pointed to the cabinets. There are protection kits, gas masks, filters for them, suits. But it will be possible to do this only after a certain time has elapsed, when it will be relatively safe on the surface. Lars's wife didn't say a word and just looked at the guests attentively. Ilsa found her gaze even a little odd. She smiled at the hostess, but received a smile in return with a second delay. Well, there's a reason they went underground, Ilsa thought. It's obviously not without a slight mental disorder. And then she added to herself, it's good that the editorial office knows where we're going. The thought that if something bad happened to them, they wouldn't care who they told about their destination, even if it was the city's police department, carefully avoided Ilsa's head. Everything turned out somehow by itself. Johan started filming. Lars started talking. Bjorn didn't shine once again. But Olivia, as luck would have it, kept trying to get into the frame, obviously in order to show off to her classmates later. Lars took them around the bunker, showing them and explaining what was where and how it worked. "There's a living room with rooms," he said. "In my opinion, there are more rooms than for 2 people, Ilsa noted. Yes, Lars stammered. "It's better to have everything in reserve, even rooms, you know. We have a medical bay here. My wife, in case you didn't know, graduated from medical school, so she trained me to provide first aid." Ilsa, of course, knew that Linda was a certified doctor, as well as the fact that Lars himself graduated from the Faculty of Engineering. It is not surprising that he managed to equip everything like this. Here we have a recreation room with a video library. Well, as with the video library, of course there are movies and programs on DVD, but there is also a huge archive on hard drives. Although I think it would have been possible without the DVD, but I decided to be safe. From what? From an electromagnetic pulse. We may be buried to a decent depth, but anything can happen. In addition, the discs can become a valuable commodity that can be exchanged with the survivors. Ilsa and Johan exchanged glances, and Olivia, unnoticed by the hosts, but so that her older sister could see, turned her finger at her temple. In the event of, a nuclear apocalypse, wouldn't medicines and food or ammunition be valuable goods? Yes, of course. Lars did not argue. But, as they say, man does not live by bread alone. Have you ever heard of such a saying? No, I haven't heard, Ilsa pointed with her head. I mean, in addition to ordinary food, people need spiritual food and works of art that can be viewed or read. By the way, our library, Johan filmed the general view of the shelves filled with books, can actually be valued no less than a can of stew. Although, of course, everything is relative. They were walking down the corridor. We have a gym here, Lars said, pointing to another room filled with exercise equipment. Linda, dear, maybe while I'm showing the bunker to the guests, you can make us some nice tea and cakes, or whatever we have to go with it? Lars' wife immediately left them, going to heat the kettle. What's in there? There's a food and water warehouse there. They walked around the bunker for a long time, and Lars told them everything and showed them what, where, and how it worked. He showed them the cleaning and filtration system, as well as a video surveillance point that looked like the workplace of some supermarket security guard. A hydroponic farm under ultraviolet lights for growing the simplest vegetables and herbs, as well as cages with rabbits and guinea pigs. Well, you can eat rabbits, I know that, Ilsa said, holding one of the fuzzies in her arms. But guinea pigs. And what? Lars calmly remarked. He generally radiated some unusual calmness all the time. In South America, the ancient Indians kept them in their houses for this very purpose. At the same time, Lars carefully avoided Ilsa's leading questions, which should have revealed the reasons why they decided to separate from the world. From time to time, he glanced at his watch, as if he wanted to get rid of annoying guests as soon as possible. Now the owners of the bunker, and the guests, were in the so-called living room, where they settled down in armchairs and sofas, and sipped fragrant tea with cupcakes and sweets. While Bjorn and Olivia were chatting enthusiastically with the hosts, Ilsa stepped aside and called Johan over. Well, the material is a bomb, don't you think? Well, it's quite enough to score the broadcast schedule, he replied with a slight skepticism. So you think it's all for nothing? Which is it, the bunker or our report? Of course, our report. Ilsa almost stamped her foot, but restrained herself. She was really hurt by Johan's attitude to their work. It's not every day, you know, that a passenger liner crashes in front of your eyes, or that terrorists take townspeople hostage. We have to do such reports. Oh, calm down, Johan said soothingly. It's quite suitable for our small channel. Maybe it will even attract new viewers and subscribers. We'll edit it, put on an alarming soundtrack, add frames from a chronicle or a movie. We'll get a candy. Look at me. She shook her fist at him playfully. Okay, Johan smiled. I think it's time to know the honor. If we go now, we'll just be in time for dinner at the hotel. Although there is a certain understatement. Yes, I suppose so, Ilsa agreed. I'll make one last attempt to talk to him about the reasons that made them hide underground. Without this, the report will indeed be incomplete. They returned to the people who were deep in conversation. It seemed that in front of them were not people who had met a couple of hours ago, but friends who had not seen each other for several years. Ilsa made not one, but several attempts to talk to Lars and Linda about why they decided to build themselves such a bunker. But all they managed to write down were lengthy explanations about the difficult international situation, that people no longer see the danger in a nuclear war and think that it is just an ordinary war, just on a larger scale. They say that people think that if it is possible to live in Hiroshima and Nagasaki today, then a new nuclear war will not entail any global consequences, and politicians have completely forgotten their responsibility to citizens. The long period of relative peace, if there were wars, it was thousands of kilometers from their borders, had completely relaxed them. Okay, Ilsa resigned herself. We'll cut up something, add it from ourselves. Olivia, Bjorn, Ilsa said to her companions, I think it's time to thank Lars and Linda for their hospitality and the opportunity to do such an exciting interview. Our viewers will definitely like it. The driver and Olivia got up from their seats, and Bjorn extended his hand to shake Lars's goodbye. Would you like some more tea? Lars suddenly suggested, and immediately winked. Or something stronger? Bjorn sighed, sticking out his lower lip. No, thank you, Ilsa said softly. We still have almost an hour to go. And I don't want to have to deal with the police and the editor. Besides, my sister is with us, for whom I am responsible. Bjorn sighed artistically and spread his hands, saying, No, that's not it. Well, you could stay with us, Lars suggested. Ilsa felt some confusion, which for some reason was accompanied by a slight anxiety. After all, he could have said that he was offering to stay the night, but somehow it sounded rather ambiguous. Shall we stay? Olivia asked, clasping her hands in front of her. Forgive me for my tactlessness, but it seemed to me that on the contrary, you want us to leave you as soon as possible. In any case, we don't want to bother you, she politely replied to Lars's suggestion, who simply waved his hand, saying that there was no need to worry. You just can't imagine how obnoxious my sister can be. Besides, we'll have to submit the material to the editorial office tomorrow. Is one night really going to change anything? Yeah, the word night did come out, but it seemed to Ilsa that Lars deliberately did not want to let them go, and apparently the same thought occurred to Johan. He went to his bag, which he had left on the floor earlier, and began to collect the equipment. We have a small channel, but the editor is strict, he remarked sententiously. It would be better if we went. Lars nodded and looked at his watch. The ground shook, and fine dust fell from the ceiling and walls. The lights went out, but the bulbs immediately illuminated the room again. The whole bunker vibrated. Dishes rattled on the shelves, and Ilsa even felt as if her feet had lost their grip on the floor for a moment. A siren sounded. What was that just now? What is it? She asked worriedly. As if in answer to her question, there was a clanking sound of hidden mechanisms in the walls and doors. And this, Bjorn added. Yes, what was that? Ilsa repeated her question to the owners of the bunker, alarmed. Even her wayward little sister stopped chewing gum and began to look around cautiously. It seemed that Lars and Ilsa hadn't noticed anything. They remained so calm. The owner of the bunker continued to hold a mug of tea in his hands, periodically taking short sips. The bunker has closed, following the algorithm embedded in it. Lars sighed. Now it will be possible to leave it only in a year, if, of course, the computer decides that the conditions outside will not interfere with it. The siren died down. There was a dead silence in the living room. At some point, Linda and I decided that if we stayed in the bunker together, there was a pretty high risk that we would fall out very quickly, no matter how well we prepared for this event, Lars said. I admit that we worked the worst on the psychological aspect of our stay in the bunker. Therefore, we decided that we would invite 2 more people to our bunker, preferably no older than our age. That's why you were so slow when you saw 4 people at the entrance. Yes, we discussed it. It was necessary to quickly recalculate the number of reserves and the capabilities of the life support system. They wanted to see if she could handle 4 inmates. Will it work? Johan asked with barely noticeable irritation in his voice. Lars looked into his eyes, held his gaze, and calmly replied without any aggression. Yes, it will. When we equipped the bunker, we set a high level of maximum load, and we also bought food and water with a significant reserve. In the worst-case scenario, you'll have to cut back on your calories, but I think that's still a long way off. I can't believe it! Ilsa was sitting on the couch with her head in her hands. This is some kind of nonsense. It's a nightmare. Am I dreaming? I want to wake up. I'm afraid you're awake, Ilsa, Lars said. You've seen for yourself what's going on outside the observation post. Yes, she saw it, but she couldn't believe it. A burning fallen forest for kilometers around, a miraculously surviving burnt roe deer standing right in front of one of the cameras, and several mushroom clouds towering above the horizon. Olivia, who had climbed into the chair with her legs, seemed to have fallen into a stupor. Hugging her knees with her hands, she turned her big eyes from one person to another and so on in a circle. Bjorn, at the same time, behaved surprisingly rather phlegmatically, crossing his legs and watching what was happening distantly. But this does not answer the main question. Did you know exactly the hour when this would happen? How did you know? And why didn't you tell anyone about the impending disaster? You could save millions of lives. Do you think? Do you really think that if we started shouting about the coming Armageddon, would we be taken seriously? But you should have at least tried. Ilsa couldn't stand it. We tried. Lars remained unperturbed. We just realized very quickly that they were looking at us as if we were crazy. Even friends and relatives. And, I note, this is despite the fact that the international situation itself literally screamed about the impending catastrophe. That's why we decided that everyone should do their own salvation. And they began to equip the bunker. Ilsa was sitting on the sofa, clasping her hands in front of her and thinking hard about what to do now. And a bad thought popped into my head. She looked at her colleagues, who were also tense. What if you made it all up? What is it? She said suddenly. And there was no nuclear explosion. And here Lars finally showed some surprise. Wait. Do you think that that is we, refuse to let you out? He set the cup down on the tea table. Ilsa was silent. But Johan took the floor. Maybe, Linda. You're a hostage like us. He looked intently at Lars's wife, as if trying to see in her behavior at least some hidden signs that she was not here of her own free will. So, you think I'm some kind of psycho, even say, a maniac who decided to lure innocent people to his basement and, deal with them there? Why not? Even if we assume that what we saw on the screens is true, then by luring us here, you decided to replenish your meat supplies. I won't deny that I've had that thought, Lars replied matter-of-factly, and Ilsa broke out in a cold sweat. But our freezers are packed with meat for every taste and color, and I'm sorry to put it that way, but it's inefficient in our conditions. Really? Johan didn't hide his sarcasm. You shouldn't have said that, Johan, Lars replied resentfully. You've seen our hydroponics and farm. Rabbits and guinea pigs are the maximum that we can afford in conditions of limited resources, and I'm not even sure that at some point we won't have to root them all out. And anyway. Lars leaned back in his chair and looked at the guests with an interested look. Then it would be logical to put a tranquilizer in your tea so that you could fall asleep peacefully, and we could lock you in your rooms, or, so to speak, in a pen so that you would not put up any resistance to us. Olivia swallowed and, with wide eyes, carefully placed the almost empty cup on the table. The guests began to look around, apparently looking for signs of drug intoxication from each other, and waiting to see which of them would be the first to fall off their feet. Don't worry, Lars reassured her. More precisely, very good expensive tea. But there is nothing in the cups except tea leaves. He stuck out his lip for a second. But you're right. It may look like a married couple of maniacs decided to lure unsuspecting victims to themselves. It would be a good horror movie. Unable to stand the tension, Johan got up from his chair and resolutely stated, "Let us out." Wait, Johan. Ilsa tried to stop him. We need to think about it. What is there to think about? He knelt down in front of Ilsa and took her in his arms. Or did you really believe this? He couldn't find the right word, or decided not to voice it. Everything was fine this morning. Well, as normal as possible. There were no signs that the states would bombard each other with nuclear warheads. We were having a quiet breakfast and watching a report from the baseball championship. What the fuck is a nuclear war? You can see that this is all some kind of stupid divorce. Ilsa pulled out her hands and rubbed her face with her palms. Tell me it's a prank, she said, looking very, very tired. Johan straightened up and glared at Lars. He just raised an eyebrow. Maybe it's a prank, maybe it's a quest, I don't know. But what I do know is that we have every right to stop it if we are not being held here by force. The last words were uttered with undisguised threat. You've seen for yourself what the surviving cameras show. Everything burned down there, and believe me, everything there is now contaminated with radiation. I would strongly recommend staying in the bunker. Lars remained completely unperturbed. That's if we believe that we're seeing a real picture, not a pre-recorded movie, Johan retorted. He was clearly gradually boiling over. Ilsa had never seen him like this before. You see, Ilsa, he doesn't want to let us out. I'm just saying that it would be completely reckless to leave the bunker now, and the protocol won't allow it. In a year, please. Then quite possibly we will be able to reach the surface, and I assure you, you will find the same things there that you saw on the screens. What? In a year? I would even say suicide. Lars continued to explain, not noticing Ilsa's exclamation, and Bjorn laughed softly in his chair. After all, you are not your enemy, right? Do you know what death from radiation sickness is? I could tell you. That's enough, Johan snapped. And then exiting through the gateway will require spending resources that are now worth their weight in gold. Lars continued to explain calmly, while not a single muscle twitched on his face. It was as if everything was as it should be, as if something had happened that he had been preparing for all his life, and it did not make any impression on him. Although yes, that's how it was. He's laughing at us. Wait, Johan, Ilsa interrupted him. You're saying that there's danger outside, right? That's exactly what I've been telling you for the past hour. Right now, up there, the consequences of a global conflict involving the use of nuclear weapons can be seen in full force. Or maybe not just nuclear weapons. The atmosphere is full of radioactive dust, and maybe biological toxins. But Johan is right, Ilsa objected. This morning, yes, in the morning. It didn't even smell like that at noon. There were no reports that war was about to break out. Listen, Lars replied. You know what the surprise effect is. Secrecy, again. The fact that journalists did not shout about an imminent attack does not mean that such plans were not hatched in the general staffs of potential opponents. Or they forgot how our politicians, without asking their citizens, joined the military bloc, which is considered hostile there, with a joyful squeal. You must have heard such an expression as the calm before the storm? Ilsa nodded silently. Johan was nervously pacing around the living room. Olivia was still sitting with her feet in the armchair, just twirling a dyed curl around her index finger, looking into the void. Bjorn also seemed to freeze, smiling stupidly every now and then, while his eyes took on a strange shine. Bjorn! Ilsa exclaimed. Did you drink it after all? And what? Bjorn replied, realizing that he had been discovered. If we're not going anywhere, then why not take a sip or two? And he defiantly took a flat aluminum flask out of his jeans pocket, unscrewed the cap, and took a sip in full view of everyone. Listen, Ilsa said to Lars. They're going to be looking for us. We have relatives and friends. They will call the police. It would be nice to call someone, Ilsa, said Lars. Besides, there is no connection here, as you saw for yourself when you got inside. Don't listen to him, Ilsa, Johan said in a raised voice. I told you before I left that he was crazy, but you didn't listen to me. Young man, why put labels on it so quickly? I just want to protect you from the negative effects of the environment, which in turn has been exposed to intense gamma radiation. You'd better go to your apartment. I think we all need to calm down and have a good rest. At some point, Ilsa realized that she had lost track of time. It seemed to her that several days had passed, and that she was dreaming all this at all. She couldn't sleep, having been lying with her eyes open all this time. As a result, she sat down on the edge of a narrow village and then completely left her so-called room. She found Olivia in the living room, where she was still sitting in an armchair with her legs tucked under her. She was afraid that her sister might do something, because she hadn't said a word all this time, just kept turning her eyes around and chewing the damn gum. Can't sleep? Ilsa jumped in surprise. It was Linda, who came up from behind. I'm worried about my sister, Ilsa said. She'll be fine, Linda assured him. This is the first shock of the change of environment. It will pass soon. And if it doesn't pass? I've never seen her like this. Maybe we should give her some wine. What are you doing? She's my sister, not yours. You and yours, if you have one, can do anything and even pour liters of whiskey into it, Ilsa snapped. Linda remained unperturbed. I just suggested a way to bring her back to reality quickly. A little red wine wouldn't hurt her. Linda stepped aside and began grinding beans in a coffee grinder. Soon, everyone who had gone to rest gathered in the living room. It was obvious that no one had been able to sleep, and in general, no one was in the mood for rest and empty lying in bed. The pop of the pink bubble attracted everyone's attention. Olivia finally raised her eyes and looked at those present much more meaningfully than before, lingering her gaze on her older sister. So, I won't have to take the final exams, she stated softly and smiled. And I won't have to take the entrance exams either. There are no more universities. Aha. And my boyfriend isn't here either. Bjorn, do you want to be my new boyfriend? Bjorn swirled the flask in his hand and, making sure that there was still something left, gulped down the rest. He shook his drunken head and mumbled, Oh, how you're storming from side to side. There was an oppressive silence in the room. There was only the sound of a teaspoon hitting the stacks of a cup. There was a whiff of coffee and cognac. You can do whatever you want, but I don't believe it. It was Johan again. Into what? Bjorn asked, sprawled in a deep armchair. What the cameras are showing us. Listen, Lars said. In a way, I can't believe what happened either. When I was first told, here, you don't believe it yourself. Maybe you're the victim of a damn prank yourself. Anyway, Lars said calmly, we won't be able to check what's going on outside until a year later. But there must be some backup option to get out of here ahead of time, Johan persisted. It can't be that it didn't happen. Surely there is some protocol for such a case. Which one? In case any of the survivors want to fight on their own? Yes, even so, Johan snapped and pointed his finger up and away. There! I have a girlfriend there, and she's expecting my baby. You know, you're crazy. Ilsa's face suddenly turned red. You could have told me sooner, she said softly. I would have taken another operator. That's different, Ilsa. Yes, of course it's different. She turned away from Johan, trying to hold back the lump that rose in her throat. It was insulting and somehow embarrassing. It wasn't her fault, though. But why is it so insulting? A pistol suddenly appeared in Johan's hand. Holy shit! Bjorn cursed, sobering up instantly. Where did you get it from? From my armory, Lars answered phlegmatically for the operator, checking his pocket. Apparently the keys fell out when I was sitting in the chair. I admit it was stupid. Ilsa turned her head and looked at him with red eyes. Do you also have an armory here? What is it? She asked belatedly. Yes, Lars shrugged. I decided not to show it to you. But why? Indeed, why? Ilsa agreed dejectedly. Ilsa, do you know why Olivia wanted to come with us so much? The younger sister's blue eyes bulged at Bjorn and somehow shrank, and Johan hissed, Shut up! Do you hear? So you're going to shoot me? I don't have the guts. Bjorn scratched at his stubble. What's her name, Helga? Or did you mean Hannah? I don't know anything about the baby, although I'm not sure about the latter. Yes, Olivia? Oh my God, Ilsa exclaimed. No, how could you? Holy shit, Bjorn, Johan shouted, brandishing his pistol. Why the fuck can't you keep your mouth shut? Well, Bjorn replied wearily, since we've been stuck here for a year, why don't we solve all the hidden problems right away? So to speak, let's start from scratch. Lars, despite the gun in Johan's hands and the fact that he apparently also had the keys to the armory, exuded complete calm. Of course, I was afraid that Linda and I would die of boredom together, especially during the first year, Lars said with a mixture of pleasure and surprise in his voice. But to do it like this. At least you could have stretched these intrigues over time instead of dumping everything at once. Are you already regretting that you decided to give us a place? Ilsa asked. No, on the contrary. What if I shoot you now? Johan asked angrily. This is going to be unpleasant. Lars shook his head. Especially for you, considering that only I know how everything works here and how to maintain the bunker. He'll work for a year, Johan said sarcastically. Maybe. But listen, I just remembered. Apparently the threat of a weapon helped, or something. Yes, there is such a possibility. What do you mean? About leaving the bunker before the end of the year, of course. It will be tedious, of course, to rewrite the program, but it is possible. I told you we could get out of here. Johan was triumphant. Johan, just leave the gun, Lars asked, but when he met the operator's hard gaze, he quickly changed his point of view. Although, you can leave it. You can even take a couple of extra clips. But give me the keys to the armory. Anyway. You don't want to leave us completely defenseless against the outside world, do you? At the sight of Lars, the operator was shaking nervously, so Linda helped Johan put on a protective suit, check the gas mask, and pull it over his head. The wrists and ankles were additionally secured with duct tape, so that not a single radioactive speck of dust got inside. He also handed over the keys to the armory to Linda, having previously taken from there an automatic rifle to an existing pistol and a pair of clips. They watched as the door of the first airlock closed behind him, then, as the second one. However, when they moved to the observation post, no one was visible on the cameras. It was still the same apocalyptic landscape as before. I don't understand, Ilsa said, peering at the screens with the image on them. Why don't we see him? The camera above the entrance was damaged. Lars tapped the black screen. And the survivors have blind spots. Why didn't we ask him to show himself on camera? Ilsa clutched her head. Why didn't any of us, or even him, think of this? You can't remember everything at once. Lars shrugged his shoulders. It happens. But you keep a record, don't you? Watching the video an hour or two back in time didn't do anything. Johan either didn't like it or didn't want to be caught on camera. All the screens showed the same bleak picture of a scorched forest and mushroom clouds on the horizon. Well, now your friend? Ilsa shot Lars a glance at these words. Your cameraman is both alive and dead. How's that? Have you heard about Schrodinger's cat? Ilsa had heard something like that, but she hadn't been interested in the details for a very long time. This is an experiment, primarily a mental one, conducted by Erwin Schrodinger. There was such a scientist, one might say, the founder of quantum mechanics. The essence of the experiment is that a cat is placed in a box. In the same box there is a Geiger counter with a very small amount of radioactive substance. If the atom decays, a special mechanism will start that will break the bulb with prussic acid, and the cat will die. If there is no disintegration, then the cat will continue to sit in the box. Schrodinger came to the conclusion that the cat is in two states at the same time. He is alive, and at the same time dead. Why a cat? Why not a rabbit? Or a guinea pig, at least. Maybe he didn't like cats. Or maybe the cat just caught his eye when he was conducting his thought experiment. And what is the result? Well, Johan, he's kind of alive just until we make sure he's dead. And it turns out that we didn't see that something was wrong with him. He didn't get on camera at all. That's right. Lars pulled out his glasses from his pocket, carefully examined the lenses, blew on them, and only then put them on. Johan, he didn't seem to want to accept what had happened. Lars continued. Nothing, Ilsa replied, and glanced sideways at Lars. I didn't know you wore glasses. Sometimes I forget about them myself. Anyway, that's what I'm talking about. Johan did not fully believe what had happened on the surface. Until the last moment, he believed that this could not be. And there's a non-zero chance that's why we didn't see him on the cameras. How's that? She blinked. It is possible that due to the superposition effect, he appeared in a reality different from what we see on the monitors. But this is very, very unlikely. Ilsa closed her eyes, then opened them again. No, there was no one on the monitors. And we? What is it? She asked, as if just for herself. So we don't believe it? Or on the contrary? Lars nodded. We believe in the reality that we see. So Johan is kind of dead and kind of alive. Who knows? Do you want to check it out? And yes, it's kind of like that. What? What else? Ilsa's voice was tired. She had never felt so tired before. I just wanted to say that in a certain sense, for those outside, Lars rolled his eyes. For those who survived, we also kind of exist and don't exist at the same time, literally until they open the bunker, or until we leave it of our own free will. You mean? Well, Lars examined the glasses again for some reason, and satisfied with the inspection, put them back on the bridge of his nose. Something could have happened to the bunker. I could have made a mistake in my calculations after all. Or a nuclear warhead exploded right above us. In other words, we're like... I understand you, Ilsa cut him off. To be honest, I don't fully understand myself. I'm not good at quantum mechanics, you know, especially what concerns the macrocosm. But if you did it... Without seeing Johan on the screen, Ilsa left the observation post. Lars followed her, taking one last look at the monitor screens. By the way, he said, I still haven't told you who exactly inspired me to build the bunker. Ah, Ilsa smiled sadly. Now you're finally going to tell me. Now you can. The camera goes up. The Beatles' Roll Over Beethoven is playing in the background. Blackout. End.